Hey, this is gonna sound really random, but I think there's a conversation that's worth having right now. I think there's a difficult conversation that's worth having. I think we need to spend some time talking about evil, pain, and the suffering in this world. Now, I know that there's a ton of topics I could attack that are far more chipper. They're gonna have you skip away from your computer a little bit more happy, a little bit happier. But I think this topic is gonna be very, very good for us to talk about. Okay, the topic of suffering is very, very good for us to talk about for at least two reasons. Okay, number one, suffering is relevant. Okay, it's relevant for us all. As followers of Christ, it's very worth it as a pastor for me to prepare you for what's going to happen in this world, and suffering is relevant. Like, every single one of you that's hearing my voice and seeing you right now, you're in one of three places. You're either coming out of a season of suffering, you are either entering into a season of suffering, or you are in the middle of a season of suffering. So as followers of Jesus Christ and learners of Jesus Christ, okay, suffering is relevant to us. But furthermore, suffering is one of those topics, not like tithing or not like prayer or last sermon series. Suffering is one of those topics, okay, that it's relevant for the entire world. Okay, it's relevant for the entire world. This is a problem that we all have to deal with. Everyone in the world has to deal with the problem of suffering, okay? Suffering and pain. There's something that's called the problem of pain, okay? And it's been coined to describe the whole, if there is a God and he's all loving, all knowing, and all powerful, how can evil exist in this world? Okay, that's the problem of pain. Now, for a lot of people, not to every non-believer, but for a lot of non-believers, the problem of pain is the rock of atheism. It's the rock of atheism. A lot of atheists, people who do not believe that God exists, they say things like, you know what, I read your Bible. You know what, the Christians they're right about one thing. They're right about, love is important. I'll give the Christian this. Christ is really cool. Jesus is really cool. But there is no way I can ever believe in a God that's all loving, all knowing, and all powerful when coronavirus still exists, when cancer still exists in children. There is no way I can ever believe that God exists when there is a world that looks the way it looks right now. So for a lot of people, the problem of pain is very much the rock of atheism. So it's relevant. I'm talking about suffering because it's relevant for Christians and non-Christians alike. And furthermore, not only is it relevant, but it's personal. Every single one of us has gone through suffering, including me. I've gone through seasons of intense pain in my life. And I'm a firm believer that God does exist. And what God does to me, he wants to do through me. So I look forward in this series of sharing a little bit of my personal story in a way that I hope it actually helps you. So my hope in this series is that you start to think honestly and biblically about pain. And hopefully, my ultimate hope is that you developed a comfort and a confidence in God in the midst of your pain. So today I want to attack 3 quick points. Okay, 3 quick hitters. 1, I want to address the problem. I'm not going to walk around it. I want to talk directly about the problem. 2, I want to talk about the problem's origin, okay, where it came from. And then 3, I want to talk about that glorious solution, okay, the solution. So the problem, okay, here's the problem, okay? Evil exists, okay? Evil actually exists. Pain and suffering, those things actually exists. And I have to say that. That sounds like an elementary thing to say, but I actually have to say this because there's a lot of religions, ideologies, even famous religions that would say things like, evil, pain, and suffering, those things are just figments of your imagination. Your job is to stop feeling. Whenever you stop feeling, then you'll be okay. Or, hey, if God exists, then evil can't exist because he's good, he pushes. No. I'm here to tell you, listen, evil actually exists, and there are several types of evils in this world. There are natural evils. Okay, this is stuff that's external to us. What I mean by that is that, listen, this world is brutal. This world is brutal. We are in a very, very dangerous place to live. Now listen, hurricanes and volcanoes, those things are not intrinsically bad. By themselves, they are not bad. As a matter of fact, hurricanes and volcanoes, they actually have a lot of agricultural benefits and ecological benefits to our ecosystem. So those things are not necessarily bad. And even viruses. Okay, I was listening to a biologist speak, and she was talking about how like the vast majority of viruses are actually good. Like you wouldn't want to live in a planet where there were no viruses. The vast majority of them are actually good. But when viruses start mutating, when they start mutating and attacking people and spreading out and bypassing people's immune systems and leading to disease and even death, that's what I'm talking about as far as natural evil. This world is a brutal place to live. Say there's natural evil, there's also moral evil. So natural evil is external, moral evil is internal to us. And this is just the wickedness of man. Just the wickedness that's in the heart of man. So this is the politician that's on stage lying to his country. And this is also the sixth grader lying to his parents. From the person who puts bombs at grocery stores hoping to blow people up, or to the person that's spending long hours in the shower rehearsing arguments that they're going to win about when I bring up that super painful thing, I'm going to crush them with that argument, I'm going to make them cry. All of those things are evidence of a moral evil in this world. Okay, they have different consequences, but they're evidence that there is something in here that is evil in the heart of man. So there is moral evil, there is natural evil, and there's also, as followers of Jesus Christ, we also know of another evil called a supernatural evil. Okay, if God exists, his adversary does as well, which is what Satan means. It's the adversary, it's the opposer. If God exists, so do demons and so do evil spirits. And if I sound stupid when I tell you that demons and evil spirits are working against you, if that sounds stupid, you're already losing. Satan camouflages himself within the conflict of daily, or within the realm of like daily conflict. He exists and he's working against you. And one of his things that he does is he wants to make you believe that he's actually not there. There is a guy named Paul who was an eyewitness to Jesus Christ, and he's writing a letter to his buddies in Ephesus, in a place called Ephesus. Okay? And at the end of his letter, he actually says this: we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but against rulers and against authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. So he's saying, listen, our fight isn't against one another, but there are evil forces that we have to fight. My seminary professor, my Bible professor, says it really well. Okay, he was talking about the supernatural world that's all around us. And he made the comment, if we could actually see this supernatural evil that's actually around us every single day, if you could actually see that right now, if God opened your eyes for you to see that right now, you wouldn't get up from your chair. You would be so petrified you wouldn't even get up from your chair. So there's natural evil, there's moral evil, there's supernatural evil, and all in all, friends, evil exists. Evil exists. Pain and suffering exist. And my favorite part about the book that God wrote is how honest it is about the evil, pain, and suffering in this world. How honest it is about that. There's a man named David who is called the man after God's own heart. And we actually have his prayer journal. He used to write little poems to God, little prayers to God. And a lot of the prayers that he's writing them when he's in agonizing pain. He's writing a lot of his poems in anguish. Furthermore, there is a man named Job that the Bible documents who lived and lost everything. He's very rich, very wealthy, a patriarch of a big family, and he lost everything. And he spends a lot of the book, it's 42 chapters, he spends a huge chunk of that book just talking to God while he is in anguish. Okay, while he is in anguish. Furthermore, there's a man named Gideon. Now, Gideon is not a household name, Most of you have heard of King David or you've heard of Job, but Gideon is not necessarily a household name. Gideon lives in Israel, and Israel at the time was living Bug's life. Have you ever seen Bug's Life? How the ants were having food and storing up food, and then the grasshoppers would come in and take the food? Okay, so Israel were the ants, and there were these grasshoppers called the Midianites. Midian. So they were being oppressed by this country called Midian, and God, in His grace, He wanted to save Israel. He wanted to save Israel from this oppression, and He wanted to use Gideon to do it. He wanted to use Gideon to save Israel versus Midian. And whenever He appears to Gideon, He introduces Himself by going, "Hey, the Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor." So God appears to Gideon and says, "Hey, the Lord is with you, mighty man of valor." Look at Gideon's response. It says this, "And Gideon said to him, 'Please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all His wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the land of Midian.'" So God walks up to him, "Hey, how are you, mighty man of valor?" And Gideon he hears the Lord, and he goes, "If you're God, what happened to everything my grandpa taught us?" He told us stories. They told us stories. Our parents told us stories about how like God split the Red Sea and He brought the plagues down on Egypt and how He liberated our people. If you're God, look at the situation we're in right now. Where are you in this? That's the problem of pain. That's the problem of pain. So right there, you see that the Bible is honest about the problem of pain. I could keep listing man after man after man after man. I mean, there's a lot of people like Gideon who feel like God has forsaken them. There's even prophets and pastors that God has deployed out to do His work. Like there's a guy named Jeremiah who God sends out to do His work. Every time Jeremiah opens up his mouth about God, like I'm doing right now, he gets beaten up for it. And like he wakes up in a ditch somewhere. To the point where he finally turns around to God and says, "God, you seduced me. God, you tricked me." People like Jeremiah, there's even several women in the Bible that are just in agonizing pain about the fact that they can't have kids. There's dozens of women in the Bible that they're sad about the fact that they cannot have kids. So friends, I say that all to say this: the Bible is not shy about talking about the evil and the pain in this life. So yes, evil, pain, and suffering, those things are real. They exist. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you feel it right now. You're daydreaming as I'm talking in a good way because you're flashing to the pain that you're feeling or you felt before. It exists and it's real. And so does God. Which brings me to my second point. Okay, the origin of the problem. So that was the problem. Now let's go over to the origin of the problem. Where did it come from? Okay, where did it come from? The origin of the problem. Now listen, there is a God. Okay, Romans chapter 1 said that all of creation is testifying to God's divine nature and His power, okay? Psalm 19 talks about how the heavens are declaring the glory of God. There is a God, and what you do in the scriptures, in the book that God wrote, in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, we are introduced to this God that creates everything. Out of satisfaction in Himself, He starts creating everything you can see and even things that you cannot see. And this is in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. And as He's creating, we're introduced to this God who is emotional. He's not some robot like, make a tree, He's an emotional God because you see, after He creates something, He says, "It is good. It is good. It is good. It is good." And then for His final act, He creates man and woman. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, it says this, "And God saw everything He had made, and behold, it was very good." He makes man and woman in His image, and it is very, very good. So this God creates everything, and it is good. And then comes Genesis chapter 3, the third page of the Bible. There is a basketball player that I love named Paul George. And besides having the most boring name in his sports history, Paul George, he's also one of the best players in the world, which I love his story. He's kind of an underdog. He wasn't heavily recruited coming out of high school, but he went to, I think, Fresno State. I think Pepperdine at first, but then Fresno State, and then he gets in the NBA, and he just becomes a phenomenal, phenomenal player. But in the summer of 2014, I was in Oklahoma and I was watching Paul George play on my TV, and Paul George went up for, I think, a layup, and whenever he came down, he broke his leg. When I say broke his leg, I don't mean he sprained his ankle or even he tore his ACL. I mean his leg snapped in half on national television. It was one of the nastiest things I have ever seen in my entire life. His leg snapped in half, and it was so disgusting. Both teams, his team and the other team, they started running away from what they saw. They looked at his leg and they started sprinting away. There were players on both teams that started crying. They had never seen anything like that before. They started crying. As soon as it happened, both coaches looked at each other and they went, this game's over. So one of the coaches gets on the microphone, Coach Krzyzewski, he gets on the microphone and goes, hey guys, thanks for coming out. The game's over. We're done. Okay, we're done. That was one of the most gruesome injuries ever. Now, time passes, and Paul George, in this most Paul George way ever, he actually ended up recovering and being better than he ever was, which is the weirdest thing. Maybe all I needed to do all along was break my leg and become good. But he actually ends up being better than he ever was. But fairly recently, he did an interview with Bleacher Report, in which at the beginning of the interviewer asked him, hey, listen, I have footage here of your injury. Would you like to see it? And Paul George looks uncomfortable and he goes, not right now. Not right now. Understandably so. Guys, don't Google it, which probably means you will. It's a gory injury. And Paul George is like, no, I don't want to see it. Why do I tell you that? It's because Genesis chapter 3 is the slow motion replay of the gruesome injury of this world. Genesis chapter 3 is a slow motion replay of the injury of your soul. And look at me, we can't afford to look away. We cannot afford to look away. So God creates Adam and Eve, and he tells them, hey, listen, Adam and Eve, go for it. Like I do an Easter egg hunt for the kids here every Easter where I plant like about 1,000 eggs all over this church. And then I have a few dozen elementary school kids. And I get to be the one that goes, ready, set, go. And they sprint to get as many eggs as possible. That's the texture you see right here in Genesis chapter 2. God is like, hey, listen, make babies, make love, make community. You guys go for it. Just don't eat of this tree. Okay, don't eat of this tree, because if you eat of this tree, you will surely die. And here is what ensues. Now, I'm going to read what actually happens in Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. Now, the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord had made. He said to the woman, did God actually say, you shall not eat of any tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes are going to be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired, to make one wise, she took of the fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. What just happened? Okay? They disobeyed. Okay, they ate of the tree that God told them not to eat from. They completely disobeyed. Now, I want you to watch what happens. Look at verse 7, okay? Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths. So what happens right there? Okay, sin enters the world, so they rebelled against God. They did what he told them not to do. Sin enters the world, and right after it, the next verse, here comes shame. Shame comes on in. At the very end of Genesis chapter 2, it says that they were naked and unashamed. All of a sudden, boom, sin enters the world, and here comes shame. Do you feel shame? Have you ever felt shame? Where here is what it comes from. So shame enters into the world. And then I'm just going to paraphrase the rest of this. So after this, God walks back into the garden. He could have annihilated planet Earth right there, but he walks back in as a healer and he asks them questions. Hey, where are you? Who told you you were naked? Did you eat of the tree that I told you not to eat from? And he's asking them questions because you telling God what he already knows heals you. And he's asking them questions. And here's what the man says. The woman you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit of the tree, and I ate. Did you catch that? The woman you gave me. In Genesis 2, it was bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. But now it's that woman you gave me. Over here in Genesis 2, Adam is naming all the animals. That's a giraffe, that's a lion, that's a tiger, that's a bear. And he sees Eve and he goes, that's mine. But now it's that woman you gave me. So not only do we have sin entering into the world and brings shame, but also now we have community conflict. Okay, there's a deep spiritual fracture between human community. Now we have community conflict. And then God starts cursing the man and the woman. And verse 16 says to the woman, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing, and pain you shall bring forth children. Here comes pain. You ever felt pain? Here's where it comes from. Verse 16, he tells the woman, your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. Marital conflict. Okay, there's where it comes from. He tells the man, hey, listen, by the sweat of your face, you shall eat bread. Now work is going to be hard. Before sin, work felt like Chipotle. Now it's going to be hard. Okay, and then lastly, in verse 19 says, for out of the dust you were taken. Okay, for you are dust, and to the dust you shall return. So here comes sin enters into the world, and here comes shame, community conflict, pain, marital conflict, work is going to be hard, and death. Not to mention anxiety. Like you and I have seen cancer before. We have seen roadkill before. We have squished the bug before. Not Adam. Okay, he'd never seen death before. So when God says, you're going to die, imagine the anxiety and fear would have flooded his bones right there. So anxiety came in, regret. How many times do you think Adam and Eve replayed that moment in their lives? Here comes regret. Now, why do I show you that? Why do I show you that? Because friends, as you can see, there is a relationship between sin and suffering. There is a connection between sin and the pain of this world. Now look at me. I'm not talking about karma. I'm not talking about you say a cuss word and then your grandma is going to fall today. Or you punch that guy, someone's going to punch. I'm not talking about karma. Yes, the Bible talks about you reap what you sow. Okay, if you slap an ostrich in the face and it pecks you, and that's how it works. You reap what you actually sow. But I'm showing you here that sin enters the world. Sin enters the world, and then sin holds the door open for all of its allies. Disease, chaos, pain, suffering, sorrow, despair, you name it. Sin opened the door for what's wrong with the world. Death and its allies have snuck in, and this is not the world as it should be. I want to get on a weird tangent right here, but I'll say it. Death is so weird. How in the world have we gotten used to death? Death is so bizarre. I'm going to be an uncle for the second time tomorrow. My niece is going to be born tomorrow. Not only that, I'm also excited for the scientist right now, wherever he is, that's discovering the cure of the coronavirus. As human beings, we get excited for childbirths and get excited for medical breakthroughs. But we all know where this ends. We all know that death still happens. Isn't that the weirdest thing? How is that a thing? The writer of Ecclesiastes says it like this: what happens to the children of man and what happens to the beasts is the same. As one dies, so does another. Death is so weird, and it happens to everyone. And then Romans 5:12, Paul, again, the same Paul who's a witness to Christ, he's writing to these Christians in Rome, and he says this: when Adam sinned, sin entered the world. Adam's sin brought death. So death spread to everyone, because for everyone sinned. So death snuck in, sin opened the door, and death and its allies came in. Now, the question has been asked all over the world for a long time: why did God put that tree in the garden? Right? Did God create evil? That question has been asked for centuries. People have played philosophy tennis, theological tennis, even Bible tennis with that question. Like Isaiah 45, Romans chapter 3, Daniel 4. People have played tennis with that. And what I'll do is I want to answer that question later, probably later in our series. I'll address it more in depth later, but here's what you need to know. We're on a need-to-know basis, but here's what you need to know. Sin is serious. Sin is not cute. Sin is not breaking rules. Sin is picking sides. Sin is rebellion against your Creator. And it caused death. And each of us have contributed to this. What Adam and Eve did is Adam and Eve started a fire that is now a gigantic bonfire. And each of us with our sins, we have stoked that fire. It can all be traced back to Genesis chapter 3. That's where suffering and pain come from here in this world. So it started from the garden and now it's here. So that is the problem. We have the problem, the problem's origin, and lastly we have the solution. The solution. Now before God curses Adam and before God even curses Eve, He curses the serpent that was tempting them. He curses the serpent and he says this: I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. And he says, he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. That line right there, he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. That line right there has been coined for centuries as the proto-evangelion, which means the first gospel or the first evidence of the good news. And what God is saying right there is that, listen, there is one coming. There is one coming that's going to fix all of this. That he right there, that he shall bruise your head, that he is talking about Jesus. And that bruising of a man squishing down a snake, and the snake biting his heel, so the man dies and the snake dies. That bruising right there is talking about Jesus dying on the cross as he's defeating death. He's dying as he's defeating death. Paul, again, I keep referring to Paul because Paul he was an eyewitness of Jesus, and he says things really eloquently. He wrote a letter to Romans, and he says this right here. Chapter 5, verse 18 says, yes, Adam's one sin brings condemnation for everyone, but Christ's, Jesus's, one act of righteousness brings a right relationship with God and a new life for everyone. Because one person disobeyed God, many of us became sinners. But because one person obeyed God, many will become righteous. So friends, on the cross, Jesus absorbed all the consequences for evil. On the cross, Jesus got all the punishment that the world deserves. He took every evil thing that you've ever done, every evil thing that I've ever done, every evil thing I've ever thought and done. Jesus got the consequences for that on the cross. He suffered infinity pain and infinity suffering to save you from the ultimate death, which is separation from God. He's trying to save us from the ultimate death. And God announces this on page 3 of the Bible. He's announcing this on page 3, which begs the question, Why so early? Why is God announcing this so early? Why not sneak attack Satan like the week before Jesus comes and goes, hey, boom, Jesus is coming, boom. Why is he announcing this so early? And it's not even just here. All throughout the left side of the Bible, almost every book, God is announcing, hey, there's one coming, there's one coming, there's one coming that's going to fix all this. There's one coming that's going to fix all this. And every book of the Bible after this, it's making a clear image of the one who's going to fix everything. Why is he announcing that so early, though? On page 3, are you kidding me? Jesus doesn't come until the Bible is like 75% over. And he's announcing this on page 3? Here's what God was doing. What he was doing by announcing this so early, here's what he's saying. He's saying this. Sin will have its way today, but not forever. Sin is going to have its way today, but not forever. And that's a relevant truth for each and every one of us. The effects of sin might plague us today, whether it's death, disease, chaos, loneliness. Some of you are feeling loneliness because of this coronavirus, breakups, racism. That can affect us today. That can even reign today, but not forever. Because there's one coming that's going to fix all of this, namely Jesus. And in the coming weeks, I look forward to talking to you about this tension that we live in. Jesus has already came, okay, but he hasn't completely eradicated or completely taken sin out of this world just yet. And I look forward in the coming weeks talking about this tension that we're living in, the already but not yet. I look forward to talking to you about that in the coming weeks. I'll see you guys Sunday.